The year is 1992. This is my life in film. So, 1992, the year that I went into my second year at university in Sheffield. I'd really started to make this, I'd made this my home, and I'd gravitated to the cinema in the city centre, the Odeon, to check out films. It's not a great cinema, it never was a great cinema, but you know what, it was pretty much the only one that I had at that point in time, at least until the Warner Brothers one would open the following year. We'll get to that later because that became a huge revelation for me. But anyway, that was me. So what really happened this year? Well, in the top 10 US box office, Aladdin took the top spot, Bodyguard, Home Alone 2, Basic Instinct, Lethal Weapon 3, Batman Returns, A Few Good Men, Sister Act, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and Wayne's World. Again, I've seen them all. Seen all of them. The Oscars this year, Unforgiven took the Film and Director Award, and Scent of a Woman took Actor, with Howard's End giving the Actress Award to Emma Thompson. So let's do a run through of the films that stood out for me from this year. So Hamlet Rocks the Cradle. Now I remember I was drawn to this film. It shows how much of a nerd I am, because John Delancey from Star Trek The Next Generation, who played Q, was in it. And that was the main appeal for me and my mates to go and see it. It's like, hey, look, it's Q, let's go watch Q do something. And, oh, God, we saw him do something. But Rebecca De Mornay as Mrs. Mott, who decides to become a nanny for the son of the person who she blames for the death of her husband, is absolutely chilling on screen. She's inherently evil. It's a solid psychodrama thriller, worth checking out. I've been back and revisited it, and it lost its impact the second time round, but it's still got some great performances in there that lift it. Wayne's World came out this year, and I mean, after we'd already had two Bill and Ted's films, the Saturday Night Live crowd decided to spin off one of their short skits, which was Wayne's World with Mike Myers and Dana Carvey, into a film outing. And you know what? It could have gone so wrong. When you look at those early Saturday Night Live skits where they're in the basements just doing mock interviews with people and being really like, okay, excellent, you kind of think, how can you make a film out of this? They did it great. There's fourth wall breaking to give it that little edge, and this first film plays on the whole idea of they start off as a small local TV network cable channel show that gets picked up by a big major network, and it's the whole media manipulation and trying to change what the vision is to what the executives think the vision should be, even though they bought you for the vision that you brought to it. There's a lot in this film that could be taken as a serious analysis of the industry, but the flippancy in which it's played, the fun that it's having, the use of the soundtrack to really have like a riot with it, from Bohemian Rhapsody to Foxy Lady. Yeah, every musical moment is there for a reason. And you've also got the wonderful Tia Carrere as the love interest in the film. Definitely a film that I have loved and loved and loved, and I rewatched this last year and still loved it. Second film lost its edge over time, but this first film still stands up well. Mike Myers really managed to make an impact when it came to this film. A film that didn't make an impact, well, it did, but not in the way that it was intending. Mower Man. Taking the name of a short story by Stephen King and selling itself as an adaptation of that story, selling itself on the name Stephen King, and delivering this awful, awful mess of a film that looked dated when it came out, and it looks absolutely shocking today. The use of CGI for the AI kind of world, the VR environments, absolute mess. It bore no relation to the book itself, except it had a lawnmower. That's pretty much it. Awful, I'm only bringing this one up. It didn't have a positive impact on me. It had a negative impact on me. This film has lived rent-free at the back of my mind for, well, since this came out, almost 30 years ago. Wow. It looks 30 years old. In fact, it looks 60 years old. Basic Instinct came out this year. Now, I went to see this with a couple of me mates from university when it came out, and we chose the opening weekend. I mean, everyone wanted to see this film because there was such a furor around like various aspects of it. By the time we got there and got into the screen, it was a sold-out performance, and the only seats that we could get were front and centre, front row, central seats, which meant we had a real close-up shot of that moment, and I think it struck the fear of God into one of my colleagues who was very timid and shy at the time, and he'd never encountered anything like that before. The film was, I think it was okay. It's got moments. It's well acted, and it's well made, but it's a bit hokey overall. It's not Verhoeven's best, but it certainly isn't his worst. Lethal Weapon 3 came out this year. Now, when this came out, this was one that I wasn't at university when it came out. I was back home during the holidays and watched it with my group of buddies from back home. And I really enjoyed it when it first came out. But it's a film that over time, the cracks have started to show. And it's still a good film. It's still a good action film. But the soap operatic nature of the relationships within Lethal Weapon were definitely embedded by this point. And also, you had Joe Pesci's most annoying character, Leo Getz, given a larger presence in this film than what he had in the second film. It's still a decent entry into the series. It's the point in the series that at the end of it, you should just not watch it any further. That's all I'm going to say. Encino Man came out this year. Encino Man, I hear you say. I don't understand these words you're saying. California Man came out this year. Yes, the film that was renamed for the British audience for reasons, which I missed when it came out at the cinema because it just didn't really grab my attention. But again, a VHS rental one night with me housemates at uni, and we found ourselves laughing away at it. Brendan Fraser really setting his mark on film with this one, and it made it so that, you know, I'd look forward to Brendan Fraser popping up in films to come. That would be my downfall. Sister Act came out this year. I've not got much to say about Sister Act except, yes, I watched it. Yes, I watched it a second time just to give it a shot. No, I don't intend to ever watch this again. I know it's got a huge fan base. I know a load of people love it. I know it's got a musical that people flock to go and see. My wife loves this film. It's not my bag, baby. It's not my bag. Patriot Games. Now, Patriot Games saw an outing for Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. Now, we'd already had one outing for Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan in The Hunt for Red October. However, this time he had a different face. Yes, Jack Ryan was going to be played by multiple people, more than what Bond would over the run of the series. This time it was Harrison Ford taking on the role, and it's again, much like Hunt for Red October, a solid spy drama with the CIA analyst Jack Ryan, who's a character from Tom Clancy books that I've never read his books, but I do love the character of Jack Ryan. I keep feeling that I should read some of the books because every representation of him on screen has worked for me. Other Tom Clancy characters, not so much. But Jack Ryan, there's something about the analyst who's thrust into dangerous situations that ticks my boxes. Batman Returns. Tim Burton gave us a sequel to Batman, threw in the Penguin and Catwoman, and when I saw this, and this was again during the holiday period back home in Liverpool, and me and my mates came out of it not really gelling with the film. The first film I'd already completely laid into our consciousness. We'd watched it multiple times. And this second film just felt underwhelming. We couldn't quite grasp what was going on, what Burton was trying to do with it. But this was a film that over time, with rewatches, every time I rewatched it, it got better and better and better. And it's now ranked above the other Batman films for me. This is the Batman film. Absolutely adore it. Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman is marvellously twisted and demented whilst fun at the same time. You've got Michael Keaton back in a role that he shouldn't have worked for, but he worked so well for. But you've also got Christopher Walken, and Walken just chews up the scenery around him. Great film, well worth seeing. Have I mentioned Danny DeVito as the Penguin? I've not. Interesting take on the Penguin. A take that I didn't take to initially because I was raised on the TV series and the comics, and so this version of the Penguin just felt a bit too grotesque, but it's a take that I've kind of loved more and more through rewatches. Absolutely top tier Batman. There's a film that came out this year that's not very good, but the impact that it had is something that I need to reference, and that is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Christy Swanson plays Buffy Summers, a cheerleader and popular high school girl who finds out that she's actually the latest in a long line of vampire hunters and now has to eradicate a nest of vampires in Los Angeles. It was written, as we know, by Joss Whedon, but when it was brought to the screen, it was chopped and changed and messed about with so much that it moved away from Whedon's vision and became a campy, po-faced piece of nonsense fluff. And it could have ended there. To all intents and purposes, with how poorly the film performed, it should have ended there. But Whedon had his vision. Whedon wanted to bring the proper Buffy the Vampire Slayer to the screen. And so, a few years later, he got a chance with a TV series, and so began the Buffy the Vampire TV series and franchise, which spun off into Angel, and has also had comic books and novels and so much more. And it all came from this one film. Now, the TV series referenced moments from the film, because in the TV series, instead of being in LA, she now has moved to Sunnydale because after burning down her high school gym, and she mentions having a previous watcher and also a role as a vampire slayer. But it was in comic book form that Whedon got a chance to present his version of this film, and if we had have had that version to start with, I think this could have been a successful big screen franchise as well as a small screen franchise. Just such a shame that it was one of those examples where studio executives think they know the story better than the person who wrote the story. Now, we've mentioned Unforgiven with the Academy Awards, and we've spoken about it in depth on the podcast previously, which you can find the links for, and go and check out, see what me and Lee thought of it. But at the end of the day, Unforgiven is a Clint Eastwood western that is basically the final nail in the coffin for those kind of roles that he played from the spaghetti western years all the way through, and it's a solid deconstruction of the genre of the cowboy, and it's well worth checking out. It's magnificently shot, it's beautifully directed, it's got a somber tone to it. There's no real good or bad guys in it, there's just a lot of very grey and blurry edged characters. Worth checking. More than worth checking. Get it watched. Hellraiser 3 came out this year. Now, Hellraiser 3 is the point in the franchise where the series starts to rapidly go downhill. I got to see this as part of a triple bill. It was a triple bill presentation of the first two films and then a preview screening of Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, at the Odeon in Sheffield. And so, got me and my mate tickets for it, and we sat, and I got to revisit Hellraiser that I'd never seen on the big screen because I was too young when it came out. I'd only seen it on home release, and I got a completely different experience on the big screen. I got surround sound. I got like footsteps behind you and whispers and voices, things that were missing on the VHS version, like sound mix. Then I got to see Hellraiser 2 for the first time on the big screen, and boy, it was beautiful to watch those two films back to back. And then sadly, they put this film on afterwards and just ruined the whole evening. It's an utter disgrace. Clearly the idea was, hey, that Freddy Krueger was good for those few films and then went rapidly downhill, but can we do a Freddy Krueger kind of thing with Pinhead and have him coming into the real world and bringing his hell creations with him? It threw away the mythology. It started to look too glossy. It looked like a typical American film. Just not a great experience. I've revisited it a couple of times because I'm one of these sticklers when it comes to the Hellraiser franchise. If I watch the first two films, I feel that I have to keep watching them. Once Pinhead emerges in a nightclub and then he creates Cenobites. What? What is this nonsense? Yeah, so you've got the DJ who becomes the CD Cenobite because he has like his deck gets embedded into him and CDs embedded into... It upsets me. Not as much as the later films upset me, but it upset me. What did cheer me up though was Firewalk With Me, the Twin Peaks movie that told the final days of Laura Palmer. Now, Twin Peaks was a huge phenomenon. Everyone was talking about it on TV. Every episode is people trying to piece together the puzzle of who killed Laura Palmer in this small town. But by the time you got to know who it was who killed her, you were already immersed in the rest of the lives of this skewed soap opera that David Lynch had given us. And then he gave us Firewalk With Me, the film, which is dark, it's bleak, it's oppressive, it's a tricky film to watch, and it's absolutely magnificent from start to finish. Even though we already kind of knew these moments from the investigation into her death, we get to see those final few days played out to chilling effect. One of Lynch's top films for me, one of my favourite return tos. The whole Twin Peaks saga is something that I return to quite a lot. Blade Runner Director's Cut came out this year. Now, I've already spoken about Blade Runner when we were on the year that the first film came out, but the Director's Cut was my first chance to see it on the big screen, and we've spoken about Blade Runner as well recently on the podcast, of which the notes of it are in the videos down there somewhere. You can find that episode. Last of the Mohicans came out this year. Now, those who listen to the podcast will know that I only got round to watching this last year as part of my oops, I've missed this film. So if you want to know what I thought about it, it was okay. It wasn't Michael Mann's best. I have problems with it. Go check out the podcast. You'll find out there. There's going to be a lot of this as we get to this era, because these are the eras that we're plucking the deep dives from. Candyman came out this year. Oh, now there's a film. Now, Candyman is getting a new version this year, hopefully. It's been delayed so often because of COVID. But this first film with Tony Todd as the spectral bee-infested Candyman with a hook hand is drawn from the story by Clive Barker. Now, Clive Barker's story is set on an estate in Liverpool. This version shifts it over to America into a projects environment, and it works. It works solidly because of it. It gives it the right setting for the background story, introducing the whole aspect of the Candyman, a mysterious figure that if you say his name into a mirror multiple times, he will appear and take your life with his hooked hand and his bees, and then you get the backstory of how he became Candyman and the whole mythology around him, and it's a solid film. As Virginia Madsen as Helen is investigating the myths and superstitions surrounding the one-armed Candyman, but has to confront her own worst nightmares as a series of murders start taking place around her. Absolutely well worth checking out. Aladdin came out this year, the Disney film, which, it's okay. I've not got the love for it that other people have got. It did have a very good Mega Drive game though, but it was a retelling of the Aladdin story. It's got the usual musical numbers. This was a decent era for Disney. This early 90s was the last of their classic traditional ones before they fell into like a mess of films that only recovered over the past decade and a half. But you know, Aladdin's got a charm to it, and it's got Robin Williams as the genie, who clearly was improvising a lot of lines, and the animators had to work around it. Reservoir Dogs came out this year. Quentin Tarantino's out the gate absolute belter of a film that focuses on a jewel heist that goes wrong without showing us the jewel heist. It just shows us the after effects after everything went wrong, and a lot of it is told in visual flashbacks, as throughout the film one of the guys is bleeding to death. We slowly get the puzzle as to what happened and how they got where they are told to us through interpretations of different characters. It opens with a scene that no film would have opened with, which is just some guys sat around a table talking rubbish, talking about Madonna's Like a Virgin, talking about tipping waitresses and how people, you know, how you shouldn't tip. General conversation. But it's the dialogue exchanges that became a staple of Tarantino's films. It's a natural kind of flowing dialogue, and it gives you relatable characters, even though you know nothing about these characters from the start. By the time the actual titles come up to Little Green Bag, I mean, what a soundtrack. You feel that you know the personalities of everyone who's around that table. You know enough to carry you through the rest of the film, and it's a solid story. It's a solid telling. I didn't actually see this when it first released. I saw this after Pulp Fiction, because it only got a very limited cinema release in the UK. And it was after Pulp Fiction came out, and I watched Pulp Fiction, I was blown away by it, that one of our local cinemas put this on as a special screening, and I got a chance to go back and rewatch it. And man, it's within my... I mean, I love Tarantino films anyway, but this is within my most rewatched Tarantino's. A Few Good Men came out this year. Now, I was at that point in my life where I was starting to kind of like get tired of seeing Tom Cruise. Who'd have thought that by then, you know, I'd have been getting tired of Tom Cruise. I'm still not tired of him now. But A Few Good Men came along, and it looked intriguing enough as a courtroom drama, so I gave it a check. And Cruise is marvellous in it. Demi Moore's marvellous in it. And Jack Nicholson, absolutely biting in it. His whole memorable moment on the stand of, you want the truth, you want the truth. Everyone knows that one, regardless of whether they've seen the film or not. And it's all the investigation into 2 US Marines who are charged with murdering a fellow Marine at Guantanamo Bay naval base in Cuba, with the suspicion all pointing to the command being run by Colonel Nathan R. Jessup. This is a stunningly powerful film, and this was the film that put Aaron Sorkin on the writer's map for me. And I think that Sorkin crafts great exchanges of dialogue. He packs every word with meaning and intent. There's no superfluous throwaway lines in any Sorkin script. Everything is there for an underlying reason. He's a master of the word art, and this was a film that showcases that talent. And let's round off with a film that has become a festive classic for many people. Now, there's been many tellings of this story through the years, from TV to radio to film. Loads and loads of different interpretations and variations. There was even a Bill Murray starring modern day adaptation, but there is no version of Christmas Carol that comes anywhere close to the Muppets. Yes, the Muppets Christmas Carol is the definitive Christmas Carol as far as pretty much anyone who's seen it is concerned. Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge is having absolute fun, playing alongside Kermit and the gang as they tell the story of A Christmas Carol, with some great musical numbers and some absolutely bitingly funny standout moments. Absolute. If you've never seen Christmas Carol, this year, once it gets to December, do yourself a favour and watch one of the best Christmas movies ever made. Muppets Christmas Carol. What a film to end on. Although we're not really ending there, are we? Because I've still got to tell you the films that I've not really seen. So, I've not seen White Men Can't Jump. Thankfully, I've not seen Stop or My Mum Will Shoot, although some people tell me that I should watch this. I don't trust them. I've not seen Howard's End. It's up there in that Oscars thing earlier, so I will get round to watching it at some point. I've not seen A League of Their Own. I've heard a lot of good things, but I've not seen it. I've not seen Mo Money. I've not seen Raising Cain. I've not seen Single White Female. Glengarry Glen Ross, which is, try saying that 10 times over. Doesn't work. I've not seen Hero. I've not seen The Mighty Ducks. Yes, I've not seen The Mighty Ducks. I know how much that will upset so many people there. But you know what? You were like 5 when it came out. I wasn't. I was 19. I've not seen Malcolm X. And I've not seen Scent of a Woman. There's some films in there that I feel that I should have seen. But you know what? This is life. We can't see everything. And I do try to go back and rewatch, well, and have another chance to see these films. And over the period of this, with me doing this list, I have managed to tick off some of the earlier ones, so I will tick off some of these over the coming months. Thank you for watching. Next time, it'll be 1993. I'll be turning 20.